Hello everyone, my name is Bogdan Ripa and today I'm going to talk about attended automation, in particular about building automations that have to deal with listening to certain application events as they happen and responding to those events. One of the challenges that this tutorial is trying to address is the fact that oftentimes you need to build automations in an attended fashion that deal with quite a lot of desktop applications, and you might not want to build one big monolithic automation that deals with everything, but you might want to build individual ones for each one of those applications. The examples that I'm going to take today has to do with two apps. One is the calculator and the other one is Notepad. So let me just quickly open both of them here. Okay, so let's say these are, I'm just using this because obviously this exists on everyone's computers, assuming Windows, and just using this for as examples, right? I mean, this could be any other applications, even web apps. So let's say I'm an attended user, and part of the automations that we want to build for this user is that when first of all, when they open one of these two apps, we want to make sure that they are in the correct state, right? For example, the calculator, I want to make sure that it's in the standard mode. It could be in any other mode here, for example, scientific. But if it's not in scientific mode, we want to move it back to standard, right? And for Notepad, I want to make sure that the font being used, so I'm going to go here, format font. I want to make sure that the font is a specific font with a specific size. So this would be like initial setup of these applications. And my automations, what they're going to do is whenever somebody opens this one of these two apps on their desktop, is going to, for Notepad is going to go and set the default text format. For calculator is going to go and make sure that it's in the standard mode. So the question is, how would I do that? So let's focus on these apps one at a time. Let's first focus on Notepad. Okay, I will create a new process. I will call it Notepad event. Okay, Notepad event process. I'll leave everything as is, and I will hit create. Now the project is being created, and this is going to be the process that will deal with Notepad, right? As this is creating, just have to give it a second. It's now downloading a lot of dependencies as well. Okay, the the project was now created. So in my main file here, what I will do is that I'm going to use an activity that is called trigger scope. Okay, now the trigger scope activity, this is where if I want my automations to have multiple, to be able to be triggered by multiple events, I need to have a trigger scope, and within the trigger scope, I need to have the individual triggers. So I add the trigger scope, okay, and in here, what I want to do is add a, let's say, element state change trigger. Okay, so when an element changes state, okay, and I will use this one. I could also use a process trigger to say when a specific Windows process is starting, and that's actually more efficient. But for the sake of this demo, I'm going to use the element state change trigger for Notepad, and then for calculator, I will use the process one. So now I have to indicate the element, which element do you want to monitor, and I'll say I want to monitor, there you go, all of this full window. And the next thing I want to do is I want to check the selector, which is how we will be targeting this particular window. And instead of untitled, I will just type in a star. And let's see if it validates. Yes, it does. I can also highlight it to see that it correctly identifies the right window, right? So whenever this window pops up, okay, as you can see here, I have on appear and on disappear. So when this one pops up, then I have my actions, and this is where I can do whatever I want. Let's change its name as well. Notepad opens. Okay, and here under actions, what do I want to do? Actually, let's create a new file. Okay, and I will call it notepad opened. Okay, this is going to be my callback XAML file that I want to call whenever notepad opens. And here in mail, I just drag and drop it, and it's going to invoke this file. Okay, so far so good. And let's see what should happen when notepad opens. And in here, I'm actually going to use the app recorder because that's should be pretty powerful. So whenever this opens, what do? I want to go here under format. I click format. Now it starts recording. You see here on the left side, this is going to be the steps that it will be recording. So after format, I want to click on font. Okay, and then here I want to type Times New Roman, let's say. Okay, so it's going to empty the field first, and then it's going to start typing. Yeah, I'm confirming. You can see it typing. Okay, that worked. And let's say I want to change the size of the text to 16 and then hit OK. Okay, now let's see. The steps were recorded here. I have all the steps. Click format, font, type into the font name, click 16, and then I'm going to click this button. So I will save and return to Studio. Again, I want to, do I need to check the selector? No, I don't think I need to do that. It should be fine, right? Yeah, this is going to be the application that it will open. Good. So with that, I can save it, and we can actually run it. So let me close Notepad and hit debug. See if this works fine. Okay, now it's running and it's waiting for that window to pop up, and that window is the Notepad window. Let's see if I open it, it should. Okay, now go to format, font, you see it typing Times New Roman, click 16, click OK. Perfect. Actually, there's more things that I want to do. After I do all that, I want to also maybe type some text just to see that it works fine. So where do I want to type here? Okay, I will confirm. And the what? I'm going to type something like sample text just to see that the text. And then let me duplicate this, and I will say I want to type an empty text. Okay, so basically remove that text. So let's run again. Okay, close this one, open Notepad, see how this works. Did I open it too fast? I guess so. Try to open it again. Yeah, the application was not yet, the automation was not yet running. Okay, 16, okay. Type sample text and then remove it. Okay, perfect. Good. So now that this works. One other thing that I want to do is actually, because this is an attended automation, okay, the actual user might move the mouse around or might type something while the application is running. So what we want to do, we want to block the user input, and we have an activity for that, block user input, while I'm doing all that. So while this is happening, I can't move my mouse or touch my keyboard anymore, or actually I can do that, but nothing is going to happen, right? And you can see here Alt F10 is how I can break out of this block here, so that as a user can still do that if something goes wrong. But in this case, I don't think anything can really go wrong. Okay, so we have this one. We have this one working. Okay. Now the other thing I want to do is, you remember I mentioned that this automation is going to run in parallel with the other one that deals with the calculator. Okay, so we'll have two different attended automations running in parallel. So for this to work, I actually have to go here under project properties, and I need to say that this is an attended automation because that's what I'm building. And also I want this to start in background. Why? Because foreground automations can only, there can only be one foreground automation running at a time. Okay, so that's why I want to say, yes, I want this to start in background. Now, when we're going to have the calculator automation running as well, we don't want the two automations to, work on top of each other. So, you do one click in the calculator app and then you do another click in Notepad and so on. Because of, focus changes and all that, I might find myself having a lot of bugs. So what I want to do is actually in this, when Notepad opens, we're blocking the user input. But even before that, what I want to do is add another activity here that's called something about with foreground, use foreground. So use foreground, what this one does is that when you have multiple processes running in parallel, only this use foreground block can run only one of them can run at a time, right? So what that means is that if this block started running, if there's another use foreground block in another automation, that one will wait until this one finishes. And there's even a timeout here, how much to wait until you can get that foreground. You can be the one using the foreground as an automation, right? Okay, so now that I've done all that, I can actually go ahead and publish this this automation. See if I can do that, and I will publish it in my personal workspace. So as an as a user, I have my own personal workspace where I can publish it. And now it tells me that it has some workflow analyzer errors. Let's see what those are. Let's ignore the warnings for now. Oh, there's a few dependencies. I have here my project dependencies. There's a few dependencies that I'm not using, Excel and mail. So I can come here and say remove unused dependencies. So it's searching and automatically removing the dependencies that I'm not using. Yeah, we're talking about Excel and mail. Yes, I want to do that. And then I will just publish my automation, and afterwards we'll move to the other one, which is the calculator one. Good, let's publish. Hopefully no more errors this time. Yep, that worked fine. I want to publish in my personal workspace feed. The trick is that when I do that, this process that I've just published, it automatically shows up in my assistant. So if I come here in assistant and let's search for Notepad, you can see here Notepad event, and let me just drag it here on the right side, which where I'm gonna have my favorites. Okay, and then if I click on it, it should download and then it should run. Okay, so you have here I have here my running jobs. I have Notepad, that is a Notepad event that is actually running right now. So let's see if it also works. Okay, I'll do the same thing. Open Notepad. Okay, it opened. Goes format font. Chooses the font. Chooses the size. It's okay. Done. Oh, sample text, and then removes that. Perfect. So it does work. Okay. Good. I will stop it for now because I just don't need it to run in the background, as we're going to start building the next automation, which will deal with a calculator. So again, create a new process. calculator calculator event. Okay, hit create. Again, we need to wait a bit until our workspace is being created. And now what I want to do is whenever calculator opens up, and I told you that we're going to look for the process, the Windows process. And by the way, let's get that name of that process right now. So I will open Task Manager, go here under Details. Okay, and should be something like with a C, calculator.exe. That's the name of the process. Okay, good. So I'll remember that. And in here, we're going to do some similar things, right? I'm going to have a trigger scope again. Okay. The trigger scope here, the trigger now is going to have to do with the process. So process start trigger. Okay, so whenever a Windows process starts, and here I have the process name, calculator.exe. Okay, this is the process that this is going to be the trigger of my my automation, right? And when this happens, similar thing, I'm going to add a new file. We're going to call it calculator opened. Okay, we can use spaces here. Nice. I'm going to drag and drop this one here. Okay, and now I know that the calculator process has kicked off. When it opens, actually let's do the same things here. It's going to start in background and it's an attended automation. Okay, good. So what's going to happen when I open calculator? Let's see, first let's attach to it. So use application. Okay, I will indicate the application is going to be the calculator app. Nice. And then what I want to do is I want to check for this label here. It says scientific. It should say standard, right? So let's get that text. Okay, so I'm using the get text activity. I want to get this specific text here. Okay. And I need to save it to a variable. What is it? It's a display type. Okay, good. Now I'm going to add an if statement. So if display type is not standard, okay, so if it's anything but standard, then try to use the recorder again. Okay, I will click on this icon here, and then I need to click on standard, right? So I'll tell it, yep, click here. Okay, now it went back to standard. Good. That's it. Nothing else I have to do. And just like before, we want to make sure that this one is going to happen in foreground, so it doesn't interfere with the other processes running, also foreground, background. And similarly, we want to block the user input. Okay, because we don't want the user to move the mouse around while we're setting up this application. Okay, so I think we're good. Let's say calculator process started. Okay, we're gonna give it this name. You're gonna see why I'm changing the name here in a second. And yeah, I think we can run this one. Let's debug it. Assuming we have any errors, we're going to be able to see them, right? So calculator, the application, it opens up. you see here this audit line saying that it did find that window, it attached to it, but then nothing happened. Why? Because it's already in standard mode. So I will move it to, I don't know, date calculation. Interesting. I didn't even know they have that. And now open calculator again. See, opens up, it goes there, clicks on standard, and now it's back to standard. And I can also move my mouse. And you've seen how, this process keeps running. Okay, so it doesn't terminate whenever this callback finishes. And the reason is that if we look at the trigger scope, you see, well, the trigger scope actually keeps keeps this process running, right? So it's continuously waiting for that particular trigger, which is this process to start. Good. So now we have both of them. Let's again remove the dependencies, unused dependencies. We don't need them. And then I'm going to publish it. And after publishing, I'm going to run both of them in parallel. Okay. See how that works. And then if I open up Notepad and calculator in parallel, they should they should be able to work right one after another. Again, the activities, the steps will not should not interfere with each other, because we used that foreground activity. Okay, I'm publishing it. Let's see my personal workspace. Yep, done. So this one is called calculator event. So similarly, I go here, let's see, calculator event, I will put it here, I will run it, and I will run the Notepad one as well. Okay, and now I have both of them, both of these jobs that have started processing. Nice. So what I want to do now, finger crossed that it will work, I will open both of them at the same time. Something that usually, as an attended user, I don't usually do. I would open them sequentially, but let's see what happens when I open them in parallel. Okay, so you see that first automation, the Notepad one, it took control of the user interface and it's doing everything that it's supposed to do. And once it's done, you can see this other automation picking up, and because it was not changed, let's change it to something else again. Ooh, that's nice. And let's run this again. Okay, so we see both of them running in parallel. So first one running, okay, done. Sample text, yep, looks good. And now under the calculator one, it goes and it resets it to standard. Nice, nice. So both of these work fine. But we talked about not just how to use events to set up things like whenever an application opens or when you're on a specific state of an application on a specific page of a website, right? Those things you've seen how you can do that. But now I want to do something else. I want to see that whenever this value here changes, so whenever I start typing, the result here goes into Notepad and it's copied here in basically as real time as possible. So the value from here needs to be copied here. Now these are actually two different processes, two Windows processes that are running. So they need to communicate to each other. Question is, how do we achieve this communication? Well, we have what we call an activity package. So let's see, I'm here on the calculator one, right? So if I go here under package manager and I search for UiPath IPC coming from Interprocess communication or intra-process communication. this package comes with a couple of activities that can resolve this problem, the communication between two different packages. And the way this works is that there's one activity called broadcast message that is sending a message, and another one to retrieve, to listen to messages, right? So you can actually have 5 different processes running in parallel. One of them broadcasts a message, and the other 4 can catch that message. And as that happens, also you can broadcast a message on a specific channel, so you don't have to listen to all the chit chat happening on this protocol. You can only listen to a specific channel. Good. So how do we achieve that? Let's stop this because they might interfere with us. Okay. How do we achieve that? Well, we have this element here, and I want to be triggered whenever the value changes here. So for that, I will use another trigger. So I have this trigger here whenever the calculator process starts, but I will actually use another trigger, which is element attribute change trigger. Element state change, we've used it before. You've seen on appear and disappear. This is what we can do. But element attribute change is what we want to listen to. So I will indicate the element. It's actually this one here. And I want to look at the selector because I know that this one is trickier. Yeah, as I said, you see the actual value was captured in the selector, and that's definitely something we don't want. So I'm going to say display is star, and this is going to be the selector that I'm going to use, right? So this is the selector that I want to monitor. And then the next thing is to choose what attribute has changed. Now this can be very tricky because how do you know what attribute to choose from this list? So to know that, I will use our UI Explorer, which is a tool that does just that. It helps you explore the user interface. I will indicate this same element. Okay, and now I will look for an attribute that has to do with the actual value. Okay, and I see here it doesn't actually have a value attribute, but it does have this name attribute, right? This name attribute that says display is and the actual value. So probably it's the name attribute that I want to look for. So I will select it from this list. Let's see, name. Is it here? It's here. Nice. Okay, and let me use name to something like result changed. Okay. So now I have 2 triggers. 1, 2 triggers. And I have a single action. So now I have to say, maybe I want to have different actions for each one of these triggers. So how do I have different code paths for each action? I can come here and I can add a switch. Okay, you can think about, maybe I have 10 triggers, right? And how do you have, individual sequences be executed for each one of them? So the expression is going to be args dot, and I have here trigger name, and trigger name is going to match the actual name here of the trigger activity. So I have one that says calculator process started. Okay, and before I do that, on the switch activity, you have to specify the type argument is going to be a string. Okay, and I will add a case. One case is calculator process started. So whenever this happens, I want to invoke this workflow, right? Obvious. But we also have the result changed trigger. So I'm going to add a new case. It's going to be called result changed. So when the result changes, what we want to do is broadcast a message. So here under activities, let's see, broadcast message. So I see available IPC broadcast message. So I'll drop it here, and I have the channel. Okay, what should be the channel name? Calculator result. Okay, let's say is the name of the channel, because we're going to have the other process listen on the same channel, right? And the message that we're sending is going to be, it has to do with the actual text of that specific field. And that text, I should find it in the args um, object, right? So args dot, let's see, get to string trigger name trigger type, and I don't have what I would expect to have here. Now this is where it's a bit tricky, because our documentation is unfortunately not as explanatory when it comes to this. But I do know that args, you see, it has a type that's called trigger args, and this is a generic data type. I actually have to convert it using a conversion function to another type that is called event info trigger args. Okay, and now that I've done this conversion, I have dot, and I have event info dot attribute info dot value dot to string. Okay, and I happen to know that that's the right thing that I need to do. Now this was a bit tricky. Why? Because usually if I use just one trigger here in the trigger scope, then the data type of this args variable is going to be right. Okay, and actually that's how I found out that that's the data type that I need. But when I have multiple triggers, each one returning different things, then the data type is a more generic data type, so I have to convert it back to what I know was used here. So not very intuitive, but it's something that once you learn how to do, you should be fine. Good. So now I have my second case, and I'm sending this information over. I'm broadcasting this information, the value that changed the name here, which is actually exactly the the value here. Okay, good. Now that I have this, let's I could test it, run it, debug it, but there's no one listening on the other side. So I'll just publish it, and we'll switch to that other project on the Notepad project to listen to this event. Okay, good. It was published. All is fine. Let's open the Notepad event now. This other project. Now in Notepad, what we want to do is that whenever we receive that message, we want to update the text here, okay, in Notepad. So we want to take, basically what we're doing is we're synchronizing the value that we have here with the value that is typed in Notepad. Okay, now how do I do that? Similarly, I have to install that IPC package. So I go here, UiPath.ipc, activities, install, save, right? And as this gets installed, I need another trigger, and the trigger is going to be that the message, I'm receiving a message. This is the new trigger that I will add on top of the application opened trigger that I already have defined. Okay, so let's see. Here under triggers, there you go. It's actually the first one. Interesting how it knew. Message receiver trigger. Okay, I'm adding this one. The channel was calculator result, I hope. We'll check that. So calculator results, singular. Good. And the value that is to be received is again going to be a part of this args argument. So when I receive that value, let's create a new sequence. We'll call it update notepad text. Update notepad text. Okay, good. And we'll call it from here. But similarly, I have to add the switch. Okay, the type is a string. Expression is going to be args.trigger name. Okay, so we have one case which is notepad opens. In this case, we're going to invoke this this file here, notepad open.xaml, and the other one is so message receiver trigger. Okay, and in this case, I'm going to update the text and the argument. Let's see. So I'm going to send. Should I send the value? Yeah, we can actually send the value. So this one is going to have an argument. Okay, yeah, let's call it new text. Okay, it's an input argument type string. Good. So this file will receive one argument, and what's going to happen now? We're going to use a set text activity. I will point to my target element where you want to set the text here, and the text is going to be how do you call it? New text. Okay, so I'm setting the contents of this variable into Notepad. Good. And I don't need to like use foreground here or any of that, because it's not going to impact the user interface. This action, the set text action, happens in the background. Okay, and I happen to know that, so I don't need to do that. Good. Okay, so we have our file. Well, we could actually, it's just one activity. Let's forget about the file. Let's delete it, and I will just put the activity right there. Update notepad text. Paste. There we go. Okay, but the text is not this one. The text is going to be arguments, which again is of type trigger args. So I have to again convert it to another type, which is message trigger args. Okay. Dot, let's see, message as string. Yes, dot message. So this is going to be the message that I've received. Okay, good. So at this point, I think we should be fine. I don't think there's anything else that we need to do. Let's test this, right? So I'll run this one here in Studio. Okay, it started the execution. Good. So now it's monitoring for, no, it's not monitoring. It's monitoring for messages to be broadcasted, right, from the calculator app. So here in Assistant, okay, I have the Notepad event running. Good, because I'm debugging it, so I see it here that it's running, and I'm starting the calculator one. Okay, so now both of them have started. I'm listening to changes on this particular UI element, and I'm going to broadcast the value into Notepad. So let's see. Oh, nice. 954. You see the value? As I change it, it changes automatically here as well. So I have this one monitoring this UI element, and then sending messages to to my notepad, which means that I also got the name of the channel right. Nice. So yeah, I guess that's it. It's just working fine now. So let me now try to test everything end to end. Go back here in Studio, stop it. Let's publish it. Okay. So we can run everything from our assistant. Okay, publish. I'm actually going to close. Close Studio. Okay, I have my two automations running now. Okay, and now I will open Calculator and Notepad. And let's see what's happening. Okay, format font. So it went Notepad. It analyzed, realized that Notepad was opened, did the initial setup, and now it's going to do the same thing for Calculator. Okay, and now it's just waiting for those same three different triggers. So for Notepad to be opened, for Calculator to be opened, and then for this value to change. Whenever this value changes, you can see it changing here as well. Okay, so now if I try to type something really fast, yeah, works. There's a bunch of messages being sent, obviously, as I'm typing this. Yeah, everything works fine. So now the only thing that is left, if I want this to be a real automation, you've seen that I went here and I started these two processes manually. But if I were part of a center of excellence and I wanted to deploy these packages to, people, attended users in my organization, what I would do is I would take those processes, I would copy them to I would copy them to a shared folder where I have those attended users as well, and I will set them up to start automatically at startup time, right? So let me show you how you can do that. It shouldn't be that complicated. I'm logging into the UiPath Cloud. From the UiPath Cloud, I will go to my orchestrator instance here. And then in orchestrator, I will go to, I have my personal workspace here. Okay. And then under automations, I should see those, let's see, event, those two processes, right? So I can come here, I can edit this process, and I think it's under additional settings. Yep. So I can say that I want the process to automatically start. Okay, launch the process automatically when the robot agent starts. So whenever me as an attended user, whenever I sign into my computer, I have Assistant that opens automatically, and this particular process can start automatically. And also I can decide that this process cannot be stopped from your UiPath Assistant. So I can't just, decide to stop it as an attended user. And if I update this, then basically that means that this process is always going to be running on my machine, and there's no way that me as a as a user can actually stop it, which is nice, which is what we want. Obviously, there's more than we need to do. We need to do error handling if something happens, a UI element is not found or any of that. We need to try catch those errors, and we need to handle the exceptions. Yeah, but anyway, this is just an example of how you can use the UiPath platform to be able to do things like initialize applications as the attended users are opening them, as well as keep or copy data from one application to another in real time without um, much delay, as you can see. And with that, I'd like to thank you.